Hello, patron folks, and welcome back to another Hallowoods weekly Q&A behind-the-scenes live stream extravaganza affair. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, not only to the show itself as we come up with weekly episodes, but also to these backstage Q&A affairs. If you are watching this in the far future, you will probably find that that there are other Q&As happening in the days or years ensuing in front of you. If you are watching this in the present, you have the opportunity to hop over to the YouTube chat side of things and feel free to drop questions or comments or other chatter there. I will answer any questions that pop up into that chat throughout the stream. Other than that, it may be on our shorter or quieter Q&As for today, as I believe I do not, unless I am missing anything, I don't believe I have any questions in the patrons ask box. So that said, as this usually is, it is mostly at this point, and I believe this is our penultimate Q&A live stream for the season. We'll probably have one more like in this set of them next week to accompany I think one of the bigger episodes in the season. And then probably after that, as things will kind of wrap up production here on the back end of things. We still have 3 episodes left in the season, but probably next week would be the final Q&A that we'd be likely to see. And then after that, probably will be on our between 3 and 5 weeks of break, slowly rolling up to the season 5 premiere, really, of Hallowoods season 5. At this juncture, it is really mostly keeping up just production on these couple final episodes behind the scenes. For this season in particular, it's been a lot of looking forward to these last few episodes, and really just kind of a fun journey and a fun change in our expectations, or maybe just that from the beginning, this season has been intended for some kind of weird plot structure that you don't see every time. And some of that has been kind of waiting for this last chunk of episodes to really delve into and pay off and kind of give this set of episodes a reason for existing in the way that it does. And so I've really been sort of over the course of it from episode 1 and releasing that and hearing everyone's kind of confused and agitated reactions. Kind of just been waiting throughout these many weeks for this last set of episodes and this culmination of the story to roll around. So I'm very excited to finally be getting into this territory, where now we can start to see a little bit more, I think, why the season exists and some of the things that I really wanted to play with in this season, kind of reaching their fruition, more or less. If fruition it can be called, not everything ties up in a satisfying way necessarily from the season, in the intended way on the writing side, but not necessarily everything that we want on the audience side. And a good portion of that is just based on the events of these last few episodes and the kind of coming into understanding that there is going to be time later to continue chasing some things that we really want our characters to chase and pursue. But that there is this kind of shift in these last kind of back end of the season as we see some characters take some more or less personal time to work on some self change instead, and to kind of almost leave the main plot rolling in the background as they need to take that time away. And so I've really enjoyed getting to build the season up to this point. And as we come into these last few episodes, it's an exciting place of both getting to write moments and scenes that I've been sort of waiting to get to write for these full many weeks of the writing and production. But then on top of that, starting to look ahead to season 5 as well. Because we are at the point now where season 5 planning is knee deep, and the sort of what those first few episodes of the new season are going to look like is coming together as we speak. So we are at this juncture both working on the end of the season and bringing everything to a kind of a close, but then also on the flip side, planning ahead for what comes next, which is always kind of a bittersweet place to be, because no season, especially for the Hallowoods, no season is ever exactly the same. And that means that there are sometimes things that I really enjoyed getting to do or getting to work on for a season that won't necessarily be possible in quite the same way. Like we probably, although there will be other things from the flavor of the season that continue, we probably won't see like it won't probably be quite the same like heavy noir detective thing that we've done for this season. It'll feel different. It'll be doing something different. And so as that becomes the case, we'll kind of move out of the window of doing some of these tropes and doing some of these literary bits that we've done in this season. And so every time that happens, the same deal with leaving the road trip season in season 2, leaving our like Call of the Wild season in season 3. It's always a little bit of a change up and kind of the end of one era of the writing for the show and then moving into the next one. And so I've really enjoyed getting to do this season. A lot of my childhood hours spent reading Sherlock Holmes books and watching various Sherlock Holmes adaptations really got to pay off here. A lot of love for films like The Maltese Falcon or Rear Window, and even like some more recent sort of horror faves of kind of the 80s slasher in the woods type franchises. A lot of influences that I hadn't got to tap into yet really came together for this season. And so it's been so much fun to get to play with all of these aspects as we sort of roll them all into the genre bundle of the story. And so it's gonna be definitely a change up and the opening of something new for season 5. But also, it will always be fun to go ahead and write like something that we haven't done yet. But at the same time, there's always a little bit of not quite regret, but a significance of a period ending that happens every time that we get to this juncture. And it's always right here in these back few episodes, because anytime that we are in the back, like 4 episodes of a season, the next season is usually actively getting worked on during that sort of overlap time. So that said, the upcoming, there are 3 episodes left for Hallowoods season 4. And then after that, and on the back end, we are much closer than 3 weeks for work required for those last 3 episodes. So after, really probably after next week, work on season 4 should be completely done. And then after that, it'll just be looking down the barrel for season 5. At this point, we probably will not have a ton of time between seasons, because I think next week on work will take us probably through the 20th, the 21st. And then after that, we will have probably in the background something like 4 to 5 weeks of time between uh, at the end of season four's work on the back end, because you'll still be getting episodes for you until the first week of October. So for you, the audience, there will be a break of about 3 weeks. It'll be closer to about 5 weeks in. I suppose for you, the audience, it's actually closer to a break of about 4 weeks, with our season five first episode debuting on Halloween, which is actually a Thursday. But it'll be back to normal Wednesday releases after that. So it will essentially be 4 to 5 weeks on the back end of getting to work ahead and plan for the next season. And so, yeah, I can't imagine a lot of that will actually go to any rest between seasons, but mostly just working ahead on crafting. And trying to buy as much time as possible. It's always easier to work on an episode coming out in 2 weeks than the episode that comes out tomorrow. And often for the Hallowoods, we end up working on the episode that comes out tomorrow. So I'm always excited for the opportunity to take a little time off and work ahead, or even just put all that time into developing this first batch of episodes for season five. So it'll probably be a heavy writing time over here. And depending on how things go, it will also be probably over this next month fairly significant for the path that 100 Eyes in the Dark, the Hallowoods tie-in novel, takes. I think that it will be determined probably over the next week or two, whether I guess basically what the next steps look like for it, and how much editing time it needs in the near future, will also sort of be figured out. Because that is the thing with getting a book out there. There's often layer after layer after layer after layer of edits. They happen at different points in the book's development and for different reasons. And so, and every time a round of edits needs to happen, it's often a bit of a question for me of how much effort and time and ability am I able to set aside to go work on that. So, and in some cases, I think even has led to breaks from the main show to put in 2 weeks of solid editing work on a book. So I will kind of have a better barometer probably over the next month, of what the next steps need to look like for that book. I will say I enjoy it more each pass of edits that it goes through, and it's really come a long way over the course of the now years that it has been in the works. So I'm very excited, especially for the benefit of the folks who have been waiting from day one of hearing about it online, just hinted the book wasn't even written at that point, to getting to watch it be written and hear about these edits that is going through. I can't wait for the day when I can actually forward a pre-order link or announce that is coming out somewhere, because it will have been a journey multiple years in the making at that point. So I do look forward to finally getting this book out there and then getting to set sights to the next book. Never Stop Dreaming, a Lady Ethel Mallory story, definitely has been, I will say development has started, but it is somewhere on the back of the list compared to immediately getting 100 Eyes in the Dark continually squared away, and then also just getting seasons 4 and 5 moving and in the works. Someday, when the Hallowoods end, I'll have so much more time to write novels. But in the meantime, the work of writing books exists simultaneously with the work of writing episodes. creating the scripts, typing up everything, recording, getting the recording into an edit, and putting that through all its paces. And then all the steps of putting it onto the internet with the cover art and the transcript and the social media posts and everything that it needs. Takes a good bit of time and energy. And also, although I'm content to be left in a room and write for 8 hours, there is a limit to how much creative output I can do without periods of kind of relaxing and creative input. And so it's important to get time off, not necessarily to get the work done, but to keep stoking the creative fires, to keep making sort of new ideas entering the system. That is also really important. And so that is something that can be difficult to sustain when sort of every moment goes towards creative work. So that is always one of the challenges when it comes to balancing both novel work and podcast work at the same time. So that said, it will essentially over the next month, there is a lot of work that will need to happen. Figuring out the next steps for 100 Eyes in the Dark is one of those things. The end of season 4, definitely one of those things as well. And that really will take, I think, the majority of the creative time over this next week or two. And then lastly, rolling into season 5 and all that brings. In addition, over the break, beyond just developing season 5, there will be some updates coming to our Patreon situation and our merch situation as well. If you're a patron, everyone should have all their benefits at this point. Mail day was yesterday. All our packages are sent out. I think some people have things coming in the mail, but otherwise we should be caught up on that front. But secondly, we will see over the next couple of weeks some updates coming for our merch and our Patreon situation. As has been mentioned before, we are switching our merch setup, or rather upgrading our merch setup from sort of drop shipping print on demand products, which is the system of you order a t-shirt with a pattern, a random company makes that t-shirt with questionable print quality and or sizing and or materials, puts it in a box and then mails it to you. And we don't, for I think any of our publicly available merch, Patreon rewards aside, we don't hold anything in house. There's no t-shirts in my closet. And so, it's various external companies that handle all of that production. It is functional, but there are some downsides. I have very little control over the actual quality of those things. The service isn't always reliable. Sometimes products just disappear, and that's sort of out of my hands. We've seen some of our cooler merch pieces just stop existing because companies stopped making that particular thing. We had color changing mugs once upon a time. We had like metal canteens once upon a time. And sometimes a company just decides to stop making those, and then that's it. There's no way to do it otherwise. So we have been for a long time, actually since year 1 of the show, been lobbying to try and work with a company called DFTBA. They produce high quality stuff. It's all actual people. It's a company owned by Hank Green, who is sort of a science personality on the internet. And his company provides podcast merch for a couple of great shows, but one of those being the Atypical Artists Network under Lauren Shipman. And so we have been elbowing to try and get in there for ages, and that has finally paid off. So instead of a random company, it will be a high quality company that we know, and they will be able to provide a much better grade of stuff, B, they won't screw people over on shipping so much. And C, there will be off the top some pretty simple merch selections, mugs, stickers, shirts, that kind of thing. But then also a much easier pathway to get custom stuff made and shipped out. So if we were to do a set of embroidered scout post badges or groundskeeper badges, or like a groundskeeper hat, something like that, we could look into it and negotiate that with them and get that set up. There is kind of upfront costs for making those things. So if I want to sell a bundle of 50 groundskeeper hats, I have to pay some pretty big production costs up front. So I won't do those willy-nilly. I will have to be a little bit strategic about which things go out. I want to make sure it's things that the audience would actually be interested in, but I will be taking advantage of that to try and offer some new merch as time goes on, and bring you some things that people have been asking for years, but now we can actually get made. So that does come with some implications for our Patreon, and it does work out pretty well because every season we usually make some small updates to how the Patreon functions anyways. I think the only downside is that our maximum discount on merch goes only to 20% with the FTBA. So instead of 25% on the drop shipping at our very highest Dark Scholar tier, I'll have to bump that down to 20%. It'll be 15 for our Hallowed patrons, which I think is the same. And then we'll introduce a 10% for our Revenant patrons. So we'll hopefully sort of make that accessible to more people. But that said, so yeah, there will be a couple updates then over between this season and the next when it comes to our Patreon tiers. Changing the coupon situation slightly is one of them. But beyond that, I think I'll be aiming to slip in some doodled postcards. So you'll kind of get a little doodle from me and a little thank you letter on a postcard when you get your merch bundles in. I'll also be adding those to the $10 tier, I think, which previously got no physical stuff at all. And other than that, we are still in the process of figuring out kind of what else we can do new this season. So feel free to comment either here or on the post in Patreon. If there's other merch ideas or patron rewards you would want to see. We kind of have bundled our whole behind the scenes thing into these weekly Q&As. And the weekly Q&As I do enjoy. It's turned out to be a nice avenue for answering fan questions and answering stuff about show production and about voice acting and these kinds of things, in a way that is maybe a little bit more engaging and not just me making a video about it, sitting at a desk behind the scenes, because this is the behind the scenes. But that said, I'm always curious for more ideas about what else we can offer or what else we can do to make the Hallowoods patronship experience worth it beyond the bonus stories and behind the scenes content and other stuff like that. So that said, we are basically just in the process of wrapping up this last season, looking at season 5, and beginning to get things together for what this next chapter of the Hallowoods is going to entail. And definitely in a big way, looking to what we can do to kind of expand the show's footprint and influence and platform over this next year. We are rolling into season 5. And this will be halfway through the Hallowoods, possibly by the end of it, possibly even further, technically from like an episode hours standpoint, because we are shooting for 10 seasons, but the trend has been for shorter seasons in this period compared to some of our previous seasons. I think our last 4 seasons have been 48 episodes, 48 episodes, 44 episodes, and 30 episodes. And it is likely that season 5 will also be 30 episodes, because that brings us to a really nice, like, round 200 episodes, which I think would be it's just a nice number to try and hit. If we were to go to 210 or 220 or something, I think it would be unsatisfactory. So it's quite possibly another 30 episode season that we'll see for this next one. But we shall see. The official announcement for that will be as its own post sometime, right after we end season 4, announcing our break and also announcing the schedule for next time. So I think until then, everybody, that is probably it for today's Q&A backstage hangout thingy. As always, feel free to drop questions for next week, and I will answer whatever is there in the Ask Box. That's the Patrons Ask Box in Patreon. It's in the description of each of these posts about the Q&As. Or if you are not a patron but continue to enjoy these, come back next week, and I'll be happy to answer questions then too. And as a reminder, next week is probably the last Q&A for this season. And then I'll probably be off for a couple weeks in the background working on season 5. So until then, everybody, thank you so much, and catch you next time. Toodles, and stay tuned.